Guys, we're gonna start in a little having some technical difficulties since I haven't done this in a while. So if you guys are just tuning in from Instagram, this is a pretty shoddy way to set this stream up, but I'm on YouTube right now. So the easiest way to be able to watch this is just to go to our Instagram story, go to our YouTube channel, Voodoo Weightlifting, and you can actually watch the stream because right now you're seeing a camera of my computer monitor of going over the stream. So it's not going to be as good a quality as just going to our YouTube channel and being able to see all of this. But so I had, how many videos do I have? I have about 5 videos that athletes have sent to me, um, just to give some analysis, just to share my thoughts on their technique, what they're doing right, what they could perform better. And keep in mind, this is just my opinion. Uh, I'm I wouldn't even really consider myself a weightlifting authority, but I'm just going to share my thoughts on what I personally see on these lifts. So we can go ahead and dive right into it. And I have my phone propped up against a chicken noodle soup can so I can't see my screen. So if you want to ask me questions, again, go to our YouTube channel, Voodoo Weightlifting. We put the link in our Instagram story, and then you can ask whatever questions you'd like there. I'll be flipping back and forth between actually analyzing the lift and watching the comments on the YouTube channel. Alright, let's get this show on the road. Okay, so, well, it is a live video. I'm taking a video of my computer monitor. This is all on YouTube, so. Alright. So this first video is a clean and jerk. It looks like it's about 235 pounds. And so we'll just go ahead and play it through. Full speed. Alright, so let's take a look at this clean first. So what I really like about this clean is just how well this athlete comes off the floor. So if we start right here, we would say this is the moment right before the plates leave the ground. His back's locked in, his shoulders are over the bar, he's looking straight ahead. And so he starts pulling, and as the bar is coming off the ground and coming to his knees, his arms are staying relaxed, his hips and shoulders are rising together, and he's staying balanced on the middle of his foot. The way you can tell that, just look at his foot right here, and you could just see his whole foot stays in contact with the ground right there. So immediately very happy with that lift. My coach would always say 90% of lifts are made or missed from the floor to the knees. You start something right, chances are you can end it right. So he's already off to a great start. So he straightens out and is getting ready to extend, getting ready to explode at the top of the pull. And something I notice right here is the bar kind of bangs away from him. It looks like, I wouldn't even say it really looks like his hips are hitting the bar, um, or going forward, but it just looks like the bar is swinging away from him. As you can see right here at the top of the pull, he's kind of created some distance between his body and the barbell. So what that's going to entail is once he receives the bar is going to be in front of him. So he's going to have to make an adjustment in his receiving position and as he stands up to still be able to make it. So he starts pulling under the bar, and I have to give him props. You could tell this guy's an athlete because look at the amount of clearance that there is between his shoulder and the barbell right here. And let me see if I can fast forward a couple of frames. But you see there's very little clearance between his shoulder and the bar. I like that a lot. It's a sign of a very efficient pull under. But so keep in mind that the bar was kind of separated from his body. It seemed to bang away from him, and so it's forward. So he receives the bar now, and so all right, he's very, very upright. Some good mobility right here, good bottom position. And so as he stands up, you could see right here, he's having to come forward to stand up and still make the clean. So the dead giveaway. Watching the feet can tell you a lot in the pull and in the squat, and you can just see as he's standing up out of his squat right around there, his right heel wants to start coming up, and that's a result of the bar swinging away from him right here. So if I were to give him advice, it would be to think about getting a brush, just getting a tighter turnaround as the bar goes from the upper thigh to the shoulders. That's really all I see. And what you could do is just practice pulls and cleans from about mid-thigh. And on the pulls, just practice getting a brush and keeping the bar close. And on the clean, practicing getting a brush and keeping that bar close. That would be my piece of advice for him. And so for the jerk, let's take a look at it again right here. I'll be honest, I didn't get enough time to actually sit and watch this right through. So let's take a look at the dip and drive first. So he dips down right here. And so I notice it's almost like you could describe it as like a rotary motion right here, which, I mean, if you went back into the older weightlifting textbooks, a coach named Carl Miller in particular, he taught a rotary style of jerking where you would intentionally try to shift the hips back and then tuck them forward to drive the bar up, which looks a little bit different here, but in general, I think something is causing him to I don't know, almost looks like he comes forward before he drives the bar up. So if you were to try to simplify the jerk, you would want to dip straight down, and then you would want to immediately drive straight up before you go into the split. And the way I would describe this jerk, he's dipping straight down and he's hanging out at the bottom of the dip before he begins to drive up. The key, if there was a trick to the jerk, it would be getting as quick of a turnaround as possible going from the dip to the drive. So as you see right here, he dips, his hips kind of tuck forward a little, then he drives up. So my recommendation would be just in general to try to get a quicker turnaround. As soon as you hit the bottom of that dip, you want to drive up. And then as he goes into the split, his front foot strikes the ground, I would say well before his back foot strikes the ground. And so there's a bit of debate on whether the back foot should land first or the feet should land together. Personally, I prefer to teach for the feet to land together. So I would just tell this athlete here to think about having the feet land together in the split. And what I mean by landing together is the feet striking the ground at the same time versus the front foot landing and then the back foot landing. Because if your front foot lands first, that's going to push your whole torso behind the bar. Your hips are going to shoot behind the bar, as you see right there. And he was strong enough to keep the bar overhead and make it, but that may be a limiting factor for this athlete down the road. All right, let's take a look at the next video. Alright, so this athlete is performing hang snatches. She's part of our generalized programming, the Voodoo solution, just started with us. So she She pulls under the bar nicely. Let's take a look at another one of these reps. Alright. Whoa, the phone fell down there. Alright. So, like I mentioned, she pulls under the bar nicely. I always like to point out what an athlete is doing right. But there are two things that really jumped out at me that I think she could improve on. One is her position from the hang. I believe that we either had prescribed hang snatches from mid thigh or hang snatches from above the knee in the programming. It looks like it's about mid thigh. And notice how when she lowers the bar to mid thigh, like look at the position. It almost looks like she's like in a half squat uh, with the bar just hanging down her arms. And so whenever you're performing segments of the lifts, whenever you're performing partial movements of the lifts, you want the positions to be as similar as possible to the position you would be in, say, if you were to have pulled the bar off the floor and pulled it past the knees to the middle of the thigh. You want the position to emulate as if you were going to do a full snatch, like if you just cut a part of the full snatch out and then we're only doing that portion of the lift. And right here, it looks like it's a bit different than how she would actually uh, be if she'd pulled this bar off the floor and been at mid thigh to get ready to snatch it. Um, so what? Yeah, like I mentioned, what she's doing, she's almost like squatting down to lower the bar. And so what I would tell her is, so stand with the bar right here, get a slight bend at the knees, and then before she lowers the bar down, just think about bending over at the waist, like closing the hips and lowering the shoulders down. And the hips and knees should be drifting back. Instead, the knees are coming forward and the hips are more sitting down than back. So the hips and knees should drift back. She should be closing the waist. So that's the one of two things I would I would address and have this athlete think about. So um let's see right here. Maybe she could extend a little more, drive her feet through the floor a little bit longer, but I would start with just fixing that position from the hang before we really went over anything else. And so the second thing I noticed is her footwork. So her feet, her left foot leaves the floor ever so slightly. You can see that right there. But the right foot, I would almost say that it pivots, or she's pivoting when she's going from her pulling stance to her catching stance. It really doesn't change that much. And it just, so you want your feet under you, like she has a good stance in her pull, and you want your feet more under you because you're more powerful. You're driving your feet like straight through the ground. Your feet are directly under your hips, so you can exert the most direct force into the ground by having your feet under you. But when you receive a bar overhead, you would like to widen your feet a little bit. So maybe her feet, instead of being staying in place, maybe she could jump her feet out to, like, say, right, I don't know, like right around here or something. And likewise with, oh gosh, that's not what I wanted to do. And on the other side too, just like moving both of her feet out. So the idea of moving the feet into a receiving position, one, you're going to be able to get lower. You're going to be able to squat a little bit deeper with your feet slightly wider. But two, you're much more stable with your feet wider. With your feet narrower, you don't have as much lateral stability, or you're not as stable from side to side. So in general, so I would just probably have her practice doing some drop snatches before the next time that she snatches, and just focus on switching from that pulling stance that she's in right here to a catching stance where her feet would land on these X's right here. So that's what I would recommend for this athlete. Just getting that position down when she lowers the bar, get into a good hang snatch position, and two, just focusing on that footwork when she goes from pulling to receiving, from pulling to catching. And so this is a snatch off the ground right here. And this athlete is pretty new. She just started working in our program, I think this week. I think this is the first video that she sent in. So let's watch that. Let's watch it again. All right. So let's see. So right off the floor, and just a heads up, guys, I'm watching some of these videos for the first time, so I may seem a little scatterbrained. I'm scatterbrained in general, but not quite this much if I'm planned ahead. So this is her starting position, or her position right before the bar comes off the floor, and she's going to start pulling. And so she's pressing through the floor with her legs. Her hips and shoulders are rising pretty well together. And let's see, her feet, are her feet flat? Yeah, they're pretty flat. So happy with that. From the floor to the knees, I would say she performs that phase of the lift pretty good. Pretty good. All right. And so from the knees to the hips to get in her receiving position. Okay, so the biggest thing that's jumping out at me right here is her arms are coming into play. So if you look at her elbows are pretty bent, and this is the dead giveaway that an athlete is pulling with their arms. And so that's going to take tension off of your back and off of your legs. It's going to be a whole lot harder to actually impart force on the bar if the arms are coming into a play. Again, you're taking the tension off of the back and the legs and putting it on the arms. And so I know that muscular strength isn't directly correlated with the size of a muscle. It's cross-section, I believe, but we won't get into that. But anyway, just compare the size of her arm to the size of her legs. And you could just see her legs and her back are going to be much stronger than her arms. So what I would tell this athlete to do is to think about keeping the arms more relaxed throughout the pull. Like her arms, maybe she's thinking right now of like flexing her arms or flexing her triceps. And my coach would teach athletes to do that. I've personally liked recently to tell people instead to think about keeping their arms relaxed. The only tension, or the tension you should have on your arms, is the tension from having a weighted object hanging down your arm, hanging down your shoulder, almost like a rope having tension in it from pulling a truck or whatnot and taking out all the slack. So I would tell this athlete just to think about keeping her arms relaxed throughout the pull, letting the legs do the lifting, thinking about driving through the ground with the legs. And so she's pulling with her arms, and almost like she's pulling the bar into her, and so it kind of causes the bar to bounce away from her a little bit. And does she kind of looks like she hops forward a little bit, and I would just, again, I just think that's in general from the arms coming into play. I would be curious to see if she still jumps forward if she keeps her arms relaxed. And so I think this is a pretty decent receiving position right there, and maybe slightly bent elbows, but that could also be caused from the arms coming into play and her not being able to put as much height on the bar because she used the arms, taking away the tension from the back and the legs to be able to get the bar overhead. So yeah, pretty straightforward. I would just tell this athlete, think about keeping your arms relaxed, drive through with the legs, and that would be a good direction for her. All right, and so let's take a look at this clean and jerk that she hit, or a power clean and jerk. All right, so we watched it in full speed. Now let's take a look at that power clean. So again, she is in a pretty decent starting position right here. Back is flat, looking straight ahead. Bar is pretty close to her shins. So she's going to pull that bar off the ground into the knees. Hey, back is staying flat. Hips and shoulders are rising together. I like a lot about this. And then but I want you guys to take a look, and let me try to increase the size of the circle a little. I want you guys to take a look at her foot, though, as the bar is passing her knees. And what do you see is happening right there? It's subtle, but her toes are coming off the ground ever so slightly. That's a dead giveaway that the athlete is coming off balanced. If you're coming off balance in a pull, two things are going to happen. One, you're not going to be as powerful, but two, you're not going to be as accurate. You're not going to be as precise. You would like for the pull to be pretty straight. And oh god, that I did something to not make it straight. So in general, you would like for the pull to be pretty straight. So I can't really do this with her facing this way. But let's say if you were to confine, we'll put this in front of her foot, and then we'll put another one of these lines right here. So just pretend the athlete was having to lift within a tube, and the bar couldn't go too far in front of them. The bar couldn't go too far behind them. And I think it makes more sense, yeah, to show the feet. And so if she's revolving around her foot too much, if her weight's shifting too far back as the bar is passing her knees, well, guess what? As the bar is approaching her hips and she extends, her weight's going to come drastically forward, and then the bar is going to go away from her. And hey, you can see it right here. Watch, as soon as the bar passes the knees, watch her feet now. So look, before the bar is even getting to her upper thigh, before she even extends, her heels are coming up. So now she's rocking drastically forward. So now, again, the bar swung a little bit away from her, just like what happened to an athlete earlier. You can see the distance that's being created between the bar and her body. So in general, the weight is going to revolve around your foot throughout the lift. It'll shift back towards the heels as the bar passes the knees, and then it'll drift towards the toes as you're getting ready to extend. But honestly, athletes don't need to think about where the weight's shifting throughout the pull. I would just tell her to think about driving through the middle of the foot, and I think all of that will take care of itself. She may be thinking about sitting back on her heels during the pull, and guess what? If you're too far back on your heels when the bar is coming off the floor, as soon as you get ready to extend, you're going to shift forward onto your toes like this, so you're going to end up coming forward. So, long story short, I would tell this athlete to think about driving through the middle of the feet on this clean. I think that would help a lot. And I gotta say, these athletes that have been performing these cleans on this video analysis, they're pretty efficient on their turnaround for the power clean, or for the clean in general. Because see, there's not too much space between that bar and her shoulders right here. The bar isn't really crashing. So it's pretty good. And so for this jerk, there are two things I want to mention. One, let's take a look at the dip and drive. And I want you guys to observe her feet again. I'm still learning how to draw on here. But so pay attention to her foot as she's getting ready to dip and as she dips. So what do you guys see right there compared to that? She's rocking back so far on her heels that her toes are coming off the ground. And remember what I said, if you are sitting too far back on your heels in an earlier part of the lift, first thing your body is going to want to do is shift forward, as you can see right here. Like you can watch, we'll just draw a line right here in front of this plate. And so watch, as she dips down, that plate starts moving past the line. That's a dead giveaway that she's coming forward right there. So guess what? Same idea as on the clean. I would tell her to think about balancing on the middle of her foot when she jerks rather than sitting on her heel, and to dip straight down. Because I think she's trying to sit really far back before she starts. So far back that as soon as she starts moving, she rocks forward. So yeah, just sit on the middle of your foot for that dip and drive too. And for the split, Her feet move out probably about where they should go. Maybe the back foot I would play with a little, but her hips land behind the bar. Like you could see her torso right here isn't really stacked. It's more like she's like bowed back into the split. You know, like there's a straight line right here, and her back is kind of bowed back. Um, and I think it's a byproduct of how her legs have landed. So she looks pretty stiff when she's hitting this jerk. Her back her back leg, her back knee is completely locked out. Now, again, there's a debate about whether an athlete should have a straight or a bent back leg on a jerk, but even if an athlete is going to have a relatively straight back leg, the leg needs to be slightly unlocked. The knee needs to be slightly unlocked. And with her landing like this, she just looks very stiff. And so the lower body is what's going to strike the ground and what's going to absorb the landing and support the bar overhead. But because she's landing very stiff in the legs, instead of her legs like absorbing the landing and kind of bending to wedge underneath the bar, to wedge her body underneath the bar, instead her torso's having to do that, and that's why she's kind of bowed back. That's just another way she's wedging herself under the bar. So I would tell her to think about relaxing the legs a little bit when she lands in the split. Like I like to equate it to an athlete coming down from a jump. Like say if you were going to hop up onto a box, you were doing box jumps. When you land on that box, you're not landing with your legs locked out. So the same thing with a jerk. And it may be a little bit weird at first to tell an athlete who's putting a heavy weight over their head to be relaxed in some regard, but the legs, like you want to be capable of absorbing that landing, of absorbing a heavy weight going overhead and being able to drive your body underneath that bar. If the legs are stiff like this, then you're not going to be able to do that. So balance and having a little bit of give, relaxing the legs a little when landing in that split. That's what I would tell this athlete. And so let's take a look at the last lift of today. So it looks like this is a clean and jerk. He spends a lot of time. He missed that jerk. The first thing that jumps out at me is how much time he spends after the clean getting ready for the jerk. And it jumps out at me because I'm guilty of that a lot. Like that's one of the worst things you can do. I'll explain why in a second. But all right, so on this clean, I wish I could see. I wish I could see this a little bit better. But his back looks like it could be a little bit more arched or a little bit more flat. This is a bad angle to really be a judge of that. But that's something I would like to see. Maybe just trying to get that back a little bit more set. But again, he comes off from the floor to the knees nicely. His hips and shoulders are rising together. His feet are staying right, like flat on the ground. He's very balanced. So very happy about that. And so let's look at this transition right here, going from the floor to this power position, getting ready to explode. And just try to watch the bar and see what kind of motion it makes going from this power position to him extending. You can see right there that bar has swung away from him. Going from here to here, that bar has swung away. So again, just like the other videos, when that bar has some distance from your body, it's going to swing away, and when you receive it, it's going to be in front. It's going to be forward. So he pulls himself to the bar nicely, receives it, but the bar is now in front of him as he's standing up. No, he still stands up nicely, even if it was slightly forward. But the takeaway for his clean, I would tell him, just like the other athlete, to practice pulls and cleans from the hang. Try to get more of a brush rather than a bang. The closer you can keep the bar when it's going from the upper thigh to the shoulders, the more efficient, the easier it's going to be. So just try to get more of a brush rather than a bang. Try to get a tighter turnaround. And so you could see he's adjusting his hands, he's getting set. He may be getting a little lightheaded because you could see his torso wanting to start to give a little. Um, and so just a word of advice, if you're an athlete that's in this position, so you just stood up out of a heavy clean and you're getting ready to jerk and you start getting lightheaded, you just need to go, because if you are standing there with a thought, well, if I catch my breath and regroup, I won't be lightheaded and then I can jerk. Trust me, that's a wrong idea. I've passed out in a competition and got a concussion because of that. Because I mean, if you're standing with a heavy weight on your shoulders, it's tiring you out more and more and more. And um, the bar is probably kind of pressing against your common carotid artery, um, and blocking the blood flow back to your brain. So you just need to go, because every second you're standing with that bar, you're losing energy. Like, think about if you were just holding a bar on your back or holding a bar on your shoulders. Like, you're spending energy just by standing with a heavy weight on your shoulders, like literally speaking. And so he's standing there and standing there, and so he misses the jerk. And I think he was getting lightheaded. Again, like you could just see his torso's kind of wobbling. But once he actually performs this jerk, he dips down and he stays balanced. But watch what happens at the bottom of his dip. What can you guys see that happens right there? The elbows are the giveaway right here. His torso just gives. His back just gives. His upper back rounds over at the bottom of the dip. So guess what? If his if his back is rounding over, now that bar is moving forward. Instead of him dipping straight down and that bar having a vertical path downwards, now it's going in front of him. So guess what? When he drives the bar up, now the bar is going to be out of place. And he almost makes this. I'm very impressed. Like he seems to hit a good split. Um, his front foot does land a little bit before his back, but I think his technique may be a little bit off here. But just from him being lightheaded or standing up out of that with that bar on his shoulders for a while. But you kind of predetermining yourself to miss the lift if on the dip your back is giving like this. So you need to have your torso just needs to stay rigid, and your legs are going to be doing the lifting. And if your torso gives at all, like it does here, then chances are you're going to miss this jerk. So personally, I just think if he would have cleaned it easier, he probably would have made that jerk, because he was standing with that clean for a while. But if someone stands up out of cleans easy and has the same problem, the athlete may need to do heavy jerk dips or heavy quarter squats. Just practicing this range of motion and practicing keeping the torso, keeping the back rigid, so that when he dips, he can dip straight down and the bar goes straight down. There's none of this rounding, none of this coming forward. And then I honestly, I really wouldn't want to try to critique this jerk, because I do believe he would have been in a great position had that torso not caved forward, and had he not have stood with that bar. I'm gonna count how many seconds he stood with this. So let's see, right? So this is him after the clean. Let's see, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10, 11, 12. He stood with that bar for about 12 seconds before he initiated the dip for the jerk. So hey man, if you're watching this video, once you stand up out of the clean, get adjusted, get a couple of breaths of air, then get set for the jerk, and jerk the damn thing. Because the longer you stand there, even if you're getting lightheaded, the less chance there is of making it. And if you stand with it too long, you're just going to end up passing out. And if you feel like you're going to pass out, instead of standing there, you may just need to dump it. But of all things to do, standing there and trying to regroup is not the way to go about it. So, alright, so for these last couple of minutes, that's all the videos I had. Does anyone on our Instagram have any questions of what we just went over. Oh, and I see a couple of there are actually people that commented in the chat. My heel shift out on footwork. Would you mark an ideal? All right. So in our YouTube channel, John Co asked, on footwork, would you mark out an ideal width for athletes that are too narrow, alternatively starfishing? And I think he was asking this in regards to what I mentioned earlier with a receiving position on the snatch. Is it every athlete's going to be different? It depends on a lot, but as a general rule, for the pulling stance, an athlete may be well served to have their feet about hip width apart, and then to experiment with their toes being turned slightly out or more pointed forward, or starting with their feet a tiny bit wider. And for the receiving position in a snatch, as a general rule, I'll tell the athletes to have their feet about shoulder width apart. And again, they play with that. And I'm a big proponent of having the athlete go by feel and see what feels best, what feels most comfortable to them. But you could also observe it too and see if it looks like biomechanically sound, if they just look stable in that position. Just go off of how they feel and how things look to you, and that's kind of how you can get a good judge of a so-called ideal width. Does my heel shift out? Does anyone in our Instagram have any training questions, any training related questions before we get off the stream? If not, I will go ahead and hit the road. So I'll give it another 30 seconds. And if we were to do this like once every couple of weeks, would you guys be interested in that? Would it be serving you guys well at all? Because during the shutdown / quarantine, we realize we have a lot more time on our hands. All right, I don't think there are any questions then. So, yes? Okay, then I guess we'll have to do it. So, I think that's enough talking for today. I'm getting kind of tired. But yeah, thanks guys so much for tuning in. And I think maybe next week. Oh, I just got one more question here. What would you use to fix an athlete's front rack caving while standing up a clean? Well, it would depend on the cause of that. First, I would see if they can actually get into a comfortable front rack, if they can perform front squats while keeping their torso rigid and upright, keeping their elbows up, and being able to support a full hand around the bar versus the bar hanging off the fingertips. If they weren't able to get into a comfortable front rack in the bottom of a front squat, I would figure out why. It's going to be a mobility related issue. Figure out what's limiting them from being able to get into that position, and then prescribing them with work to gain the mobility to get in that position. But I also find a lot of the times mobility can be misattributed to why an athlete isn't able to get into a good front rack, or them caving when they're standing up out of a clean, when it's in actuality it's because the bar wasn't pulled into the right spot. Like I mentioned earlier, with that one athlete's clean, the bar just banged away from him and was in front of him, so he had to cave forward. He had to come up onto his heels to be able to save the clean because the bar was in front of him. So in that case, you would need to develop a more efficient bar path. In his case, he was banging the bar off of his upper thigh, so I gave suggestions on teaching him, having him feel how the bar should contact the upper thigh in more of a brush-like fashion, so that the bar can stay closer to his body when it's traveling from the upper thigh to the shoulders. And so I have a video. I think it was one of the last Instagram videos we posted in regards to technique, the IGTV video, and I think it's called the front rack stretch. And so it just helps open up the muscles in your upper body, the lats, the triceps, and the forearms, to be able to get into a good front rack. So if you just go under our Instagram TV videos, you can take a look at that. Well, all right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. That was fun. I may have to do that again, um, maybe next week around the same time. I'll take a survey and see what works for you guys. But yeah, if you ever have any training questions, feel free to reach out. And if you guys need any programming at all during this crazy time, we just started putting out a general template called the Voodoo Solution, $20 a month without video analysis, and we do offer uh, it with video analysis for an additional fee. But yeah, if you guys have any questions at all in regards to training, feel free to reach out. Happy to help. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.